We can now bring in Gershon Baskin, Middle East Director at in the International Communities Organization and a former hostage negotiator. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. This cabinet meeting, which is underway in Israel, is taking place at a time when the Army Chief of Staff is publicly vowing to express the military stance without fear. What does a total siege of Gaza look like, and why is the Army against it?
Total siege of Gaza or total occupation of Gaza is a disaster. First, for the people of Gaza, who have already experienced more than 60,000 deaths, most of them non-combatants, women and children, elderly people. There are more than 2 million homeless people in Gaza. There's no food, there's no water for most of the people in Gaza. The surrounding and the conquering of the city of Gaza and the southern enclaves, which have been humanitarian zones, as called by Israel, will lead to many more deaths. It will lead to the deaths of Israeli soldiers, and it will probably lead to the death of the remaining living Israeli hostages. This is a plan for a disaster, and the army is against it because they know what it will involve. They know that it will wear the army to the point where it's too thin to be dependent upon to defend Israel's other borders. The army is already exhausted. Most of the soldiers, the reserve duty officers and soldiers have been 300, 400 days in duty now in Gaza and in other places in Israel. It is just too much for us to handle, and it is also the continuation of the committing of war crimes in Gaza. And Israel is suffering already from the beginning of being related to as a pariah state in the rest of the world. And this will only get worse for Israel.
I want to talk about Israel standing in just a second. But Gershon, just 2 days ago, I interviewed a resident in central Gaza, Baha Zakut, and he is in Deir al-Bala. And he has 2 children. And I spoke to him and asked him if he had a plan in place if Israel's government does, as Netanyahu is indicating, he wants to take over all of Gaza. And take a listen to what he said to me.
Move for the 11th time. Every time we lose something, we lose part of our dignity, we lose part of our comfort. So I think that we are fed up from continuous displacement and movement, and I think that this will even affect my children at the psychological level, because they are keep moving constantly. But the worst thing is that even if I decided to move, where should I go? Because Mawasi Khan is the only safe place, or so-called safe place, but still there is no one single meter in Mawasi is empty and can accommodate even a tent.
Gershon, so it was a very difficult conversation, as you can imagine, to speak to a young father who has 2 children, and he's saying, I'm going to stay put. I've moved 11 times, because if Israel does go ahead and take control of Gaza, where are the people in central Gaza supposed to go?
There is no place for them to go. As Baha said, there are no safe places in Gaza for Palestinians. Every place will be surrounded by the Israeli occupying army, and we know what the results of that will be. This has to be stopped. It is the obligation of the entire world to stop this now. The Israeli government has gone haywire. Prime Minister Netanyahu is no longer logical or strategic in terms of protecting the interest of Israel. This war should have ended many months ago. Hamas has been defeated. It can no longer govern Gaza. Hamas is ready for a deal that will release all the Israeli hostages in 24 hours, I have been told by them. But they want Israel to end the war and withdraw from Gaza. They don't want to continue the fighting. They're willing to give up governance. Netanyahu needs to continue the war for his own political survival. This is an Israeli war for the survival of the Israeli coalition government and the survival of Prime Minister Netanyahu. It has to end now.
But is that why the ceasefire failed just a couple of weeks ago? Because Israel wanted to continue to have a presence within Gaza? Is that why? Because from what you're saying, Hamas said it's ready to give up governance in the enclave.
That's right. For sure. There's no question about it. The ceasefire that came into effect on the day before Donald Trump entered the Oval Office was supposed to include talks on a permanent ceasefire starting day 15 and concluding by day 30. Those talks never convened, and in March, Israel broke the ceasefire and went back to war. And the war's continuation is nothing about military strategy. It's nothing about removing Hamas from power. Removing Hamas from power is something that can be done through the agreement to end the war, and then the transference of the governance in Gaza to a responsible, viable Palestinian governing body that will control Gaza until the Palestinians can hold national elections. This is what needs to happen. Gaza is Palestinian. It was Palestinian. It will remain Palestinian, and the Israelis have nothing to do there. They need to retreat to their border and defend the border from the Israeli side of the border. They can set up a no-entry zone where anyone enters will be shot in order to protect the border communities that were attacked on October 7th. But there is no reason for Israel to spend another hour in Gaza.
Because, as you said, it seems that Netanyahu is hell-bent on doing what Netanyahu wants to do, because just a couple of days ago, we had top former Israeli security officials who signed an open letter calling on the U.S. president to pressure their own prime minister to end the war. They wrote that Hamas no longer posed a threat to Israel, adding the war was no longer just. So, essentially, Netanyahu just doesn't care what everyone else has to say.
Netanyahu only listens to one person in the world, other than his wife and his son, who are also a bit not stable, and that's President Trump. But Trump yesterday said that Israel will do what Israel wants to do. He's given a green light to Netanyahu to continue this war. So I ask, where is Trump, the peacemaker? Trump, who said that he will end wars and not make wars. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who believes that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, by allowing Israel to continue this war, removes him from the possibility of ever being considered for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
His job is to tell Netanyahu to end the war now.
In the past few weeks, there were hopes that a ceasefire could be clinched, that we could improve the humanitarian situation on the ground in Gaza. That ceasefire seems a way off. But today we had hostage families who actually sailed off the coast of Gaza. And what was really touching is they used loudspeakers to try and communicate with their loved ones who are held by Hamas. Where is Israeli public opinion on the possibility of the Prime Minister expanding the military operation once again in Gaza?
The overwhelming majority of Israelis want this war to end and want the hostages brought home. But Israeli society is exhausted and is still traumatized from October 7th. You hardly find an Israeli who doesn't think about October 7th. Every single day, we're reminded in the press and the media all the time of October 7th. So there are demonstrations that are taking place all over the country, but they're small and people are exhausted. I was at a demonstration myself last night. It was very disappointing by the low turnout. But the polls show us that up to 80% of Israelis want this war over, and they want Netanyahu to end it. It's complex because Israelis still think that the war is justified even till today, and they don't think that there are innocent people in Gaza, and this is part of the trauma that they've been to. But we need to understand, we as Israelis need to understand that what's happening in Gaza should never happen, that these are crimes against humanity and war crimes that are being committed by Israel, by the Jewish people who have experienced these kind of things in our own past, and we should be the first ones to calling on our government to end it.
You spoke about Israel's standing on the world stage. It's here in Paris. Even I go out and talk to people, and if you meet Israelis, they're reluctant to tell you where they're from for fear how you're going to judge them. Earlier today, we had the exterior of the offices of Israel's national airline El Al. Somebody had spray painted it, used red paint to write El Al Genocide Airline, and wrote Free Palestine. I know you said that Israel's prime minister only listens to two people, his wife and Donald Trump. But when it comes to international pressure, what can the international community do besides saying, yes, they're going to recognize Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September, which I asked that resident who I spoke to in Gaza the other day if that's going to change anything for him. And he said, no, it won't. Stopping the war is going to change something. Recognizing Palestine, we can figure that out at a later date.
He's 100% correct. Nonetheless, Europe, France, and other countries need to do the right thing, and the right thing is to recognize the state of Palestine because they support a two-state solution and have only recognized one of them until now. But the person is correct. Europe needs to use the power that Europe has vis-a-vis Israel, and that's primarily in the economic sphere. But it's also on the side of free entry to the European Union for Israeli citizens, including 700,000 Israelis who don't live in the state of Israel. They live in occupied Palestinian territories. I know today if you are a non-American citizen, you have to fill out an online form before you enter to the United States, even if your visa-free entry is guaranteed to the United States. You need to be cleared first. The same thing for the state of Israel today. If you're not an Israeli, you have to fill an online form to enter the state of Israel. I suggest that the European Union use that as a first stage in pressuring Israel, that Israelis should be required to fill an online form. And if your address is in the occupied territories, in the occupied Palestinian territories, you will not be granted visa-free entry into Europe. There are other things, settlement products that enter Europe freely. These are contraband made in illegal settlements according to European law. What the Europeans need to understand is that Israel, regardless of what you do and say, will call any criticism against Israel as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And any actions taken against Israel will be called anti-Semitic actions. They are not. There is legitimate criticism of Israel. It may be anti-Semitic by some part, but I know that France, which strongly supports the state of Israel's right to defend itself, the state of Israel's right to exist, must also take action in accordance with international law and not allow Israel to continue to do what it's doing in Gaza.
Should Benjamin Netanyahu be sanctioned by individual European member states?
Well, you know, he is wanted by the International Court, the Criminal Court in The Hague. There was a warrant for his arrest. And when he travels abroad, he's very careful not to fly over territories that could demand the plane to land and to take him into custody. This is going to be the case for many, many Israelis, for officers in the army, for other members of the Israeli government. Israel is going to be a pariah state, and Israelis are going to find that their world is shrinking. There are going to be very few places in the world where Israelis are made to feel welcome.
Gershon Baskin, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Always appreciate your analysis.
Thank you.